Hey guys, before we get to today's episode, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I will be taking a 1 week sabbatical. During the week of Christmas, I will not be recording a podcast, doing any social media, things like that. So unfortunately, after today's episode, you'll have to wait until the week of New Year's to get a brand new episode from me. But I can assure you I will be back the week of New Year's and you will get a brand new episode then. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year's. Hey guys, so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the idea of equity. We're continuing with our series on why invest in real estate. This is the third one in this series that we've done. And today we're focusing on one of the more tangible benefits of real estate investing, specifically rentals. We've previously talked about the idea of leverage. And then we also talked about some of the tax benefits that you can get from it. And today we're going to talk about equity. And I really think this is one of the more tangible benefits that a lot of people underestimate when it comes to rental investing. Let's start with a little definition and discussion about what equity really is. We often hear about equity in regards to a personal home purchase. We hear about home equity line of credits, home equity loans. Well, every time that we make a payment on our primary home purchase, our payments are divided between interest and principal. Every time we apply money towards the principal of the balance of the loan, what we're doing is we're actually earning a little bit of equity in the property. This is the most basic way that people get equity in property. There's other ways that we get it, but usually the way we get it is by making payments towards the loan that is due on the property and reducing the principal due. If you've made payments towards the principal balance on your mortgage that total $10,500, you have actually gained equity of $10,500 in that property. And again, this is the most basic way that we earn equity by any property that we own, whether it be our private residence or an investment property. This is how we most times build our equity. The other way we can build equity in a property is through natural appreciation. If we purchase a property for $176,000 and 5 years later, the property value goes up to $196,000, we've actually gained about $20,000 in equity in the property. Now, this is a rather extreme case. You don't usually see this sort of natural addition or appreciation to the property value. It was just an easy math thing for me, and it's what came to mind. But it does help you understand the concept of natural appreciation. You purchase it at one price, a certain price, and then at some point in the future, it increases in value. The difference between what you bought it at and what its current value is your natural appreciation. Another way that we gain equity in a property is by doing things that force the value to go up. This is referred to as forced appreciation. So when we do something to the property that adds value, we are getting forced appreciation, and that's giving us additional equity in return. Oftentimes when we think about adding equity or adding value to a property, we tend to think about what HGTV shows us on their remodeling shows. We think about maybe adding a bathroom or a half bath. Maybe we upgrade the kitchen. We do stainless steel appliances, granite countertops. That's where our minds tend to go. As real estate investors, we have a different way to get forced appreciation and to gain equity in a property at a fairly fast rate. As real estate investors, we might go and purchase a property that is maybe derelict or just hasn't been maintained very well. And as a result, there's not only a lot of deferred maintenance, but maybe there's a significant amount of damage to the property. If we buy that property and we complete a rehab on it where we fix everything up and we make it better and make it maybe even livable, what we're doing is we're creating equity in that property. So because we bought something at a very low price, because it wasn't up to par in condition, we put the money and the effort into rehabbing it, we've increased the value of it, which means that we now have equity in that property. So the difference between what we bought it at and what we made it be worth, that's the equity that we have in that property now. There's a lot to be talked about in this conversation about forced appreciation and creating equity, especially when we're talking about rehabbing, because there's the differences between contracting out, doing work yourself, everything like that. But really, for our purposes about equity, let's just focus on the fact that we can do things like purchasing a rental property that is maybe subpar, doing things to it that increase the value, and thus getting ourselves equity in that property. But I want to go back to what we talked about in the first portion of this episode, where we talked about how every payment we make is giving us equity in the property. Now, when we do this for our private homes, it is our money that is increasing the equity that we have in that property because we're paying off the mortgage with our own money. When you own an investment property, you are not the one that is directly paying for the equity that you're getting out of that property. You are renting out that rental property. Someone is giving you a rent check every month. A portion or all of that rent check goes towards paying your mortgage, which means that it's not actually your own money that is decreasing the principal, and it's not your money that is gaining you equity in the property. Just let that sink in for a moment. The idea that you are gaining equity in a property without putting money into the mortgage that you earned. You are using money that your tenant has earned, that they are giving you for rent, and you're turning around and using that rent money to pay down the principal and gain equity in the property. For me, this is one of the amazing powers of rental investing. The idea that maybe as you're starting out or you love your job, you can go to your job, work your job, your tenant sends you a rent check every month. You turn around and use a portion of that money or all of it, depending on the size of your investment. You send it to the bank, they reduce the principal on the mortgage, and you have thus gained equity in the property. And you haven't used your money that you earned at your job to get that equity. That's something that I like to call tenant equity, because it is actually the tenant that is giving you that equity by paying their rent and you turning around and using it for your mortgage. When I'm talking to prospective real estate investors, people that think they want to get into investing, one of the first things I talk to them about is the idea of tenant equity, especially if they've made a home purchase for themselves and they don't quite know where they're going to go with their retirement planning. I use tenant equity in this case because they already sort of generally know about equity because they just went through the home buying process or they did, which means they're probably looking forward to the day where at some point they can take equity out of their home and use it for either improving it, maybe a trip, whatever people choose to do with their home equity line of credits when they're not investors. So they obviously understand the idea of what equity is. And the idea that they can earn equity without using their own money is something that really drives the usefulness of rental investing home to these people. Now, the true power of equity comes from pulling out that equity when the time is right to use it as a down payment for another property. Now, generally speaking, the right time is once the primary mortgage on that property is mostly or entirely paid off. You want to be sure you aren't overextending yourself with your lines of credits, making sure that you can make your payments if something were to happen with the housing market or anything like that. But the power in it is having used somebody else's money to gain equity in a property and then turning around and using that equity that they've paid for to get another property to accelerate your rental income cash flow. Now, this is where I get really excited talking about this, so bear with me here. From start to finish, you take, let's say, $20,000 of your own money. You purchase a rental property. You rent out the property. You have rent that starts coming in. That rent check that you get every month, or the rent checks if it's more than one unit, a portion of them is going to go to the mortgage company, and that nice tenant is going to be paying your mortgage. But go further with that. That nice tenant is also going to be earning you equity in the property, because the bank is going to apply some of that tenant money to interest and some of it to principal. Every time they apply tenant money to that principal, you are gaining equity in the property. 15 years down the road, maybe that mortgage is paid off or it's very close to being paid off. Your nice tenants over the years have done a wonderful thing for you. They have given you a huge amount of equity in this property, with you only having to put in $20,000. You decide it's time to get another property, so you take out your equity loan, you take that money, you use it as a down payment for another property, and then you have thus increased your total rental income that you will get every single month. And you've only used, get this, $20,000 of your own money. The original $20,000 on the original property is the only part that you put in, because you took out an equity credit on the property. You took it out for, let's say, $50,000, and you put that as the down payment towards the other rental property. You didn't put any cash into that second property as a normal deal. That is the amazing power of tenant equity and equity in real estate. This is what gets me really, really excited. I mean, I'm going to be honest. If you aren't excited about investing in real estate yet because of this or the other topics we've talked about, I don't know how I'm going to get you excited about investing in real estate. Like I am stumped about anything that could be more exciting than a way that you're using other people's money to improve your lives, and it's completely 100% legal. Like there's nothing more exciting about real estate than this to me. So I hope you are pumped. I hope you are excited. And I hope that this really started to get the wheels to turn in your head about the true life-changing power of rental investing.